Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we welcome to the show a political public relations business strategist, as well as the past executive director of policy to the Premier of Ontario, and currently the executive director of the Strategy Corporate Institute of Public Policy and Economy, Mitch Davidson. And he is the former leader of the Ontario PC Party, and for the past 4 years, Chief Executive Officer for the Ontario Real Estate Association. And let's not forget, the host of Tim Hudak's show. The Tim Hudak Show, you can hear Sundays from 5 to 6 on CFRB Radio, Mr. Tim Hudak. Thank you both for joining us.
Good to see you, Mike. Arif, thanks for having me back, by the way, in this now COVID version of Hitting Home.
Yes,
Welcome.
We're a little remote now. It's not as warm and fuzzy, but we'll do our best with what we got here. I want to get right into it. It's a different world out there for sure since you were last on the show, Tim. And here we are now around 8 months into the pandemic. And though the broader thinking in the early days was that this was going to pass by, but in the meantime, we thought it was going to impact upon house buying. But what we are seeing is the home is more important than ever to people out there. And the sales numbers are certainly reflecting that. Do you think this is something that's going to continue? Is it a short-term wave, or are we still going to be hungry for homes going forward?
Yeah, you know, COVID, Mike, has turned everything upside down. Everything's been turned on its head except for two things. Number one, home ownership continues to be a strong, abiding Canadian value and a smart investment. And number two, the Toronto Maple Leafs continue to make a first-round exit from the NHL playoffs.
Yes, exactly.
COVID can't even beat the Leafs. Not even COVID can stop the Leafs streak.
Things never change.
But you know, I think what we saw here, and we're really proud to have partnered with Mitch Davidson here from the Strategy Corporate Institute for Public Policy and Economy, because he was a lead advisor, the head advisor on policy to the Premier and various leaders of the PC Party. And he's got a good perspective on where he thinks the market may go in those factors. To me, you know what, COVID has reinforced the value of home. It has played such a huge role in this crisis, a place of safety, security, of families getting closer together. Every couple's had, Lord knows how many conversations, what they love or hate about their place. And that's then moved some decisions forward. Maybe more space, maybe getting a home office, maybe moving more out to the country, retiring earlier. So what I think we're seeing largely is a evolution of trends, not a revolution, and people making decisions sooner than they otherwise would have. I believe that the future of homeownership is actually going to be stronger as a result of COVID.
Yes. Strategy Corp, I'll bring this to you, Mitch. You devote a lot of study towards the future of economy as it impacts workers and residents. You guys recently did a white paper, Rebuilding Ontario, I believe, and I think you worked in conjunction with the Ontario Real Estate Association on that. Can you share some of the highlights and insights, each of you there, on what's in that paper? And I'd love to hear what you learned from putting that together.
Yeah, it's funny, when we first sat down with OREA to write this paper, it was before the pandemic. So we were thinking about issues related to home ownership and what have you. And then of course the pandemic hit, and it changed everything. So what does the Ontario government need to do to get the economy back on track? And is there a way that housing can play a key part in that, specifically the real estate sector in the GTA and outside of the GTA? So what we did was we looked at a number of options. We ended up with 15 recommendations, some of them about public health or childcare to help people get back to work, and others about how to get money flowing in the economy. Things like a home renovation tax credit to make sure that people aren't doing those home renos that now they're looking at because they need the office space or they need the extra room because they're living at home and working at home. How do we make sure that those renovations are done above ground so that, you know, there's some tax revenue generated, the workers who are doing that work get employment insurance and all those other benefits that they need. We don't drive that stuff underground and drive that revenue underground. So some things like that, home renovation tax credits, some land transfer tax policy stuff, which we'll get into, but ultimately an across the board set of recommendations to try to get the economy on track.
So there is a reality to that, though, and the reality is that corporate Canada has figured out that it's quite possible to run a business and have a business existing with its workforce working remotely. There's obviously been hiccups. Everybody's had to get used to the various platforms for video or teleconferencing, et cetera, but we are working from home more and more. And so those renovations are not solely because I've always wanted to have something nice and new at home, but part of it is the reality. I've got children at home, or I need to make my space more usable, and I need to be able to focus my attention during work hours on work. So I think that those are very real and reasonable expenses, and I'm sure the tax code will make that possible. But I certainly think also that the tax credits is a welcomed idea. So now, Mitch, just by the way, as a frame of reference, you've got over your, I think it's your right shoulder, but you've got some great photography there. Just for our viewers and our audience, this isn't a platitude. You didn't just throw that on the wall to look like you were one of the locals here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I believe you've grown up in the area is what I've heard. Yeah,
you're right. I don't have a map of every lake in the province or in the country ready to go in case I'm on different shows. But no, born and raised in Ormonte, just north of Barrie. And my dad was actually a commercial real estate broker for about 30 years in town. So we found these old aerial photos in the basement from his old office. They're all from the 1980s. So, you just take a look. I know you can't see it, but if you zoomed in all the way, you take a look at what Barrie was in 1980 and what it is in 2020. It's a very different city. So when you're talking about housing, you can really physically see the difference behind me for sure.
We have grown. We have expanded.
We've got to go to break in just a moment here, but both Mitch, I'll actually throw this to you based on your white paper. I mean, nobody's arguing the fact that COVID has impacted the economy. It's impacted the way we've done. We are working together. The question that I have is, has the government kept up? And Mike, you had a question regarding, does the government need a whole new playbook?
Yeah, it's a great question. As someone who used to, sit at the cabinet table and do the briefings with the premier and all that, I mean, I would say the government certainly kept up off the start. And the thing about the pandemic is I think everybody was guilty of thinking that this would be a shorter term thing. We were originally maybe thinking weeks, maybe a few months. And here we are 6, 7, 8, 9 months into the pandemic, and it's still going, and it looks like it could get worse and worse. So the problem with this is it's constantly evolving. And so even if government was on top of it to start, they've got to keep being on top of it. It's a difficult thing to do. So they're doing their best, but I think some people are getting wary about the restrictions and the lockdowns. It's going to be an interesting development as we go into the winter months when going outside's a lot tougher to do and people are looking for some reprieve. So should be very interesting times to see ahead.
Well, I think the two go hand in hand. We got to go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how does policy that we just spoke about here and the reality of live and work environment, how does that come together in development and municipal planning? Stay with us. We'll be right back with Tim Hudak and Mitch Davidson on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV, Barrie, and we're pleased to be joined by Mitch Davidson, who's the Executive Director of Strategy Corp. Institute of Public Policy and the Economy, and Tim Hudak, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario Real Estate Association, both mouthfuls. Thank you very much for being with us both. Before we went to break, I asked Mitch a question, and that really was, has the government kept up with the reality, with the fast pace and change and adaptation and the reality? And but I didn't give you a chance, Tim, so please have at it, and then I'm going to follow right up with another one for you.
Yeah, here's where government's falling short. I mean, it's too much bad news all the time, and I get that, but you have to get some silver lining out there. And here's where I think governments could do better at all levels. Focus on getting the economy back on track. What are the policies going to be to get people back on payroll, to help the small business who's worried if they can keep their lights on? And in turn, then that will help long-term spending on infrastructure and in housing. So that's why we partnered with Strategy Corp, because we said government's going to do this, the sooner the better, but let's put some ideas on the table, like the land transfer tax holiday to spur more real estate exchanges and a big impact on the economy. Think of that as the jumper cables on the economic engine of this province, or or a home renovation tax credit. We want those to be on their desks, Arif and Mike, when they start turning their eyes to stimulating the economy as opposed to just closing things down.
So let's put this into a little bit of perspective, though, for let's go with the, dare I say, average Canadians. And the fact is, what percentage, and I think I know the number, but what percentage of the GDP is directly tied to home building, home construction, home renovation, that kind of thing? And let's put some things into perspective, because considering a jumper cable, I think it's a very large percentage.
Yeah,
Tim,
I don't know
I'm going to deal with that
off the top of my head, but it is, if not the largest, the second or third largest in jobs, depending on how you count it, in the province of Ontario. And let's not forget, it was really real estate that kept our economy's head above water during the last downturn in 2008, 2009. Actually, a national government at that time under Prime Minister Harper brought in a home renovation tax credit just for that reason. People were looking for it. It brought economic activity out of the black market, so they would pay taxes and help spur the economy. And Arif, Mike, you guys know this, you live it and breathe it every day. When somebody buys a home, there's no greater purchase for spin-off activity than home purchasing, right? Appliances, home renovations, new furniture, spin-offs and services like moving and cleaning. If they really want to put those big cables on the engine, accelerating home purchases is the way to go, and that will restore confidence to our economy and to consumers.
So
for sure.
I think that this isn't a frivolous statement. I mean, I think when people, what are we seeing with people doing with their money? We're not just talking about, we're not recommending that people buy new flat screen TVs. We're not asking people to buy throwaway items. We're saying the reality is we're no longer, or we're certainly adapting our lifestyle. We may or may not be commuting as much as we were in the past, and we can invest. We may not be going away on vacation. We can look at staycation, but we can also work at a work, play bubble or environment that we're talking about. I really don't care for the word bubble, but it is kind of a reality. Now, let me change gears just slightly into more localized planning and municipal planning. We recently had the wonderful Nick Nanos on the show from Nanos Research, and he talked about, one of the things that really stuck with me is he said, everything that we've done over the last several decades up until today with increasing density and changing built form and how we lay out our how we've awoken to a better way of laying out urban planning or planning and development in local municipalities. Everything that we did before, it made sense then, but as of COVID, it's all wrong. And we need to really have a good hard look at what we're doing. I pushed him a little bit and I said, are condos gone? And he said, no, condos aren't necessarily gone, but how we lay out those condos or how we lay out our work, our living spaces will no longer, includes the balcony that we no longer use or never used to begin with, but will include a workplace in there. I want to tie that into today. Right now, as we speak, Barrie City Council has in front of it the largest planned development that it has ever seen. In the downtown core, it will be, I believe, if my memory is correct, 34 stories. It'll be three times the size of the largest thing in any proximity to this proposed structure. Does this make sense going forward to have that much density, that kind of a build, given what we know about the fact that people are going to ride elevators, they're going to be confined to their spaces, and they won't have any backyard to do any exercise in, etc. Everything that you're talking about, moving to the country and all that, is out the window in a 34-story planned community. Can you speak to that, either one of you?
Yeah, and I mean, I can go first. I think what I would say is one of the things in the paper we talked about was, people don't move to Innisfil or Barrie or Ormondante to live in a condo necessarily. It's not to say that that type of housing mix doesn't need to be there, but the restrictions that are generally placed on municipalities by the provincial level of government to say you must build this type of density or this type of home don't necessarily need to be there anymore. And arguably they didn't need to be there in the start. But that said, I think condos still do have a place in urban municipalities. One of the things that we looked at in the paper was, how do we convert buildings that are no longer as useful? You look at something like retail. People are doing a lot of their shopping online. So you've got a bunch of strip malls or older plazas that are in great prime downtown locations. They have access to transit, lots of services. Maybe we can convert those into multi-residential housing. There's a mall in Sudbury that's actually converting part of its frontage into residential in the mall. That might be a little far-fetched, but we're talking about, can we turn the Kozlov Center into something different? And that's a conversation worth having. And I think COVID has really accelerated that conversation. So do condos have a place in Barrie? I think they do. Maybe not at 34 stories, who knows? But I think there's still a need for that mix. It just has to be a little bit more carefully planned.
Yeah. And
we use Nick
sorry, go ahead, Tim.
We use Nick Nanos a lot. In fact, you can see our monthly polling right here at OREA, COVID19info.com on consumer sentiment. But look, this is not the zombie apocalypse, right? This is not the end of the world. We're all going to be in walled communities and little tribes fighting against the undead outside the gates, right? We will get through COVID. So government's made a mistake the last 10 or 15 years. Nick is right, and going way too far to this side and controlling all development. The last thing you want to do, and only big buildings, is go the opposite and go to all flat level, right? It's got to be of a balance. I've never known a developer that doesn't know how to make a buck. If they think something is going to work, they're probably right about that. They're investing a lot.
Yeah.
Reality is you need a balanced policy that will give people affordable options, whether it's detached homes, whether it's townhomes, whether it's condos. I think over time, all of those will be in demand.
Yeah, the balance just shifts depending on the demand. And it ties in with that, as well as with this project that Arif mentioned. And we see this with any multi-residential project that's coming forward. And there's been a number of them proposed for Barrie. There's always a certain segment of the population that says, we don't want that. They're against growth. They're against higher density. They just want their city to stay as it is. But a lot of these same people complain as well that we don't have affordability anymore. Prices are getting out of reach for too many. And I thought I'd ask you guys, because you've got your finger on this pulse.
Mike, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought. It's a great segue. We're going to go to break real quick. Please frame it up and tee it up for everybody. But we got to go to break. Stick with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. We're here with Hudak and Mitch Davidson. And the question I was setting up just before the break is how there's resistance to growth in many communities, but at the same time, very much concern about affordability. I'd love to hear each of your thoughts on how affordability ties in with actual growth taking place and how the two are intertwined.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, if you don't have the right supply mix, you don't have enough housing, your prices are always going to go up. And you're going to have the people who are living in the wrong types of homes for their current situation. You know, you'll have people just out of university who are renting out a full house instead of a condo because that option isn't available. So it really is important to continue to build the right supply and the right types of supply. And one of the things that we recommended to do that is just to take a look at all the restrictions, the red tape and the rules. There's different rules per different municipality. There's all sorts of times and permits you got to go through. And so how can we make that a little bit quicker, get those homes in the ground, get those prices down?
Right.
COVID's been an interruption. It's been an interruption when the market went down. We see pent-up demand coming to the market now. And, you know, truth be told, I think because people are commuting less, going out for lunch less, filling up the car less, there are more savings, or newly married couples, right, had to postpone the wedding, they can put for a down payment. So those pressures are in the system along with record low mortgage rates now. But I think over time, we need to increase supply. That has not changed. Those fundamentals won't shift. They may just be delayed. And I think government needs to focus on giving people affordable options, knocking down outdated bylaws that are restricting choice and innovation in the marketplace. And as Mitch said, speeding up the process. When you see areas like York Region, your neighbor, that have development charges and costs that put $120K price tag on a home before the first shovel hits the ground, right? 120 off the top for that. That's crazy. Wow. That's really going to harm the next generation.
Well, and if I was to look at it in terms of harming the next generation as well, we've struggled in the downtown area of Barrie to say, well, listen, you know what? We want our retailers, we want our entrepreneurs, our business owners to thrive. We want the downtown to be a rich, vibrant place. And we also want affordability. The condo has been a solution for that. And if we can make the condo affordable and we can get more people into the downtown walking, the downtown becomes a place to do business and to enjoy leisure and walks and exercise, et cetera. So I think if we're looking at it holistically, I personally don't see a reason not to put condos into the downtown and increase density down there. We're just going to continue to, at least as you said, Tim, for the time being, we're going to maintain social distancing. It's not the zombie apocalypse. Let's get out and enjoy our beautiful waterfront in the downtown.
Absolutely right. And your point there, Arif, is that when the empty nesters, the kids are away, can still enjoy beautiful Barrie, have a place maybe on Lake Simcoe, right? That they can actually do that. That frees up that family home for an up and coming family, a young family.
Yeah. And Tim, I don't want to let you get away today without asking you something that's on the minds of many within the business here. And that is this rumored equity tax that our federal government is potentially going to put on home equity when we sell our homes. What do you think the impacts may be on Canadians if such a tax is brought about?
It's a terrible idea. It's hard to imagine a worse idea on taxation. It will punish the middle class. It will mean that the savings that people have baked into their home purchases over time will be robbed away from them unfairly when they're halfway through the game. Sad thing is, Mike, thanks for asking. I think it is a real reality in some political circles in Ottawa. There's just too much smoke happening there with various rumors. I think all of us in this business, whether mortgage brokers, RF real estate professionals and others, need to stand up for that Canadian dream of home ownership, to say this has been a proven long-term investment. And it would be robbery of government to confiscate the savings of hardworking middle-class Canadians by bringing in a big tax like that. Would be punishing, and it would really grind our economy to a stop when we're trying to crawl forward.
Yeah,
what can the sorry, I was just going to say, what can the average citizen do to help fight this off? Should they send a letter to their MP, do you think? Or
yeah, I letter, email, social media, whatever, bombard them, whatever party they are with. We're in a minority government right now. It's precarious. I don't think any government party is going to reveal their secret tax plans now. But if you can make this a four-letter word, if you can poison the well, so to speak, by telling your MP or future candidates, no way in hell do you want to see your home equity robbed by the government, start doing that now. Send them a message, make it public, social.
And the reality is, no matter who's elected, if that passes, if that goes through, don't think that the next government is going to so quickly rescind that. We are in a hole. We're in a massive deficit position, whether you like the way it's been handled or not. This is where we are. And if the government's got access to a new revenue stream, they're not going to be too quick to let it go. Before we leave and wrap up this show, Tim, there's something I think you want to share about some policy changes being recommended with regard to open houses. And I think you've got about 1 minute to get that out.
Yeah, you bet. Well, number one, you want to see more details of our plan with Mitch Davidson from Strategy Corp. Check it out at OREA.com, our Rebuilding Ontario framework, how to get our economy moving by using real estate as an economic engine. A lot of great ideas. Number two, we continue to press public health and safety. I'm proud of our realtors, our brokerages that have put safety above profit. One thing OREA has pushed for as well is a ban on in-person open houses, particularly in hotspots. The Ford government has listened to that. So that's now in effect for York, Peel, Ottawa, and Toronto. There are so many virtual tools. Our realtors are skilled in saving you time and money. Use those virtual tools, minimize face-to-face contact where you can.
And Mitch,
Excellent.
where can our viewers catch your white paper, catch what the research you've been working on, and learn more about what you're up to today?
Yeah, so they can find the white paper at OREA.com, as Tim mentioned, but you can also check us out at strategycorp.com, Strategy Corp with a P on the end, and you'll find the whole Public Policy Institute there and all the work that we've done for the Ontario Real Estate Association and others.
Yeah, you have a great blog too, as well, with a clever name. Mitch, tell us a little bit about your blog.
Oh, but the podcast?
Podcast. The podcast.
Yeah, the podcast is called Intended Consequences. So we try to have conversations. We had Tim Hudak on the program just a little while ago, a little bit deeper in depth, but about policy matters that matter to people. And the goal is policy options that do what they're actually supposed to do. Too often we have governments stand up there and say, this will fix everything, and it doesn't. So we actually try to have those conversations on an in-depth format. So you can check that out anywhere where you get your podcasts, like Spotify or Apple Music.
Excellent.
Gentlemen,
and Tim, we'll give you a quick second.
Both for being an incredible resource to us, to our audience. I want to thank you for joining us on the show. We hope to have you both on. Obviously, not enough time to get everything that we wanted out, but I hope you'll join us again. But in the meantime, we want to thank you for watching Hitting Home on Rogers TV Barrie, and we'll see you next time.